Welcome back to another episode of the Afros and Knives podcast. I am your host, Tiffany Rosier, and in this episode, I am speaking with the founders of Black Food Folks, Director of Culinary Community Initiatives for James Beard, Colleen Vincent, and Brooklyn-based photographer specializing in food, drink, and events, Clay Williams. Black Food Folks is a fellowship and gathering of Black professionals working in the food and drink community to support each other and help each of us succeed. We talk about the need for our own spaces, the importance of telling our food stories, and what Black food and drink looks like in the future. Thank you for listening in. And remember, Afros and Knives is a listener-supported program, and so we would like to thank all of our patrons and sponsors for their generosity and partnership.
I'm Colleen Vincent. I work for the James Beard Foundation, and I'm the co-founder of Black Food Folks. I've been in the food industry on and off for a long period of time and never really on purpose. But I have worked for the James Beard Foundation for the past almost 14 years. My current title is Director of Culinary Community Initiatives, and what that means is I show up in the places that the foundation hasn't necessarily shown up in before, and offer to listen and provide any solutions or assistance that we can. And in the past year or so, I've been to the Food Sovereignty Summit, Federation of Southern Cooperatives annual meeting, Fresh Fest, Bugs, Resistance Served. So a lot of places where, a lot of things that the foundation has never really attended or participated in for one reason or another. So my focus has always been, first from an internal compass, being the champion for people of color in diverse communities at the foundation, and kind of doing my own side projects. And then, it became more formal in recent years. And Clay and I have known, that's where we know each other from, is the foundation. Clay is a photographer, as you well know, and the foundation has a photography hires photographers for our many, many events. So that's how Clay and I met. And so it's been quite some time. And we started talking about all the people we were talking to. And it turns out all the people we were talking to were having the same issues, which Clay will speak to because he articulates that a lot better than I do. But needless to say, because of us coming together and wanting to address the challenges that people of color face in this industry, kind of in a head-on, community-based way, Clay said, let's get everybody in a room. I said, I have a space. And Black Food Folks was born last year, February 2019.
Yeah, this week makes a full year since our first meetup.
Wow, that's incredible.
Yep.
Yeah.
So yeah, we had our first meetup. We had over 100 people coming to a place in Flatbush. They're trying to call it Prospect Lovers Garden now, but it's Flatbush.
What is that? No. Okay.
Flatbush. I mean, I grew up here. It's Flatbush. And it was very much like a family reunion. It was festive. It was emotional. It was very joyful. And, we captured this energy. And we've been going ever since. So we kind of, a lot of it is learning by doing. A lot of it is seat of the pants. But one of the aspects that I'm most proud of is our Instagram. So it's really awesome when your co-founder is a professional photographer, because he can he can not only capture the right moments and compositions, but also like he can capture the beauty that is like Black people in food and beverage, in all aspects of food and beverage. So our Instagram is really, really beautiful. Everybody is lit properly. See all our glorious skin tones. And, it's a celebration, quite frankly, of what we've done, of what we're doing and what we can do.
I love it. And for you, Clay?
So I'm Clay Williams. I am a photographer focusing on food and drink. Let's see. I started writing and photographing food and events here in Brooklyn in something like 2007. And I've been doing it more or less full time since 2011. So a little while now. I have been on the food beat. I started on the food beat by covering street food and, little openings of restaurants and that sort of thing back in, the late aughts, early teens. And over that, since then, I've sort of, I've gotten to know a lot of people in the industry. I've gotten to connect with folks like Colleen, like our friend Nicole Taylor, executive food editor at Thrillist. A lot of different chefs working in the industry. And like Colleen said, over time we would, we'd end up in conversations. We'd meet up for coffee. We'd talk during like a break at a shoot. I'd stop in at their restaurants or bars, and we'd have a drink. And this is not just Black folks. I've connected with a lot of folks in the industry, but there was a common thread when talking to Black folks who were connected to food and drink, and that was that there was always some sort of resistance to our voices, to the stories we wanted to tell. There was always some sort of dilution or just barriers put up to letting us express ourselves, and that's from the point of view of writers. That's from the point of view of chefs. We've been told for so long that our stories are a niche, right? That it does not meet the mass market. It's not something our readers will understand, and you need to start the story from the beginning. Or if you are a chef focusing on, your historic food, that's, you're talking about your historic Southern food, and it's like, oh, well, you got to throw in some barbecue, or make sure you've got some of this or that or whatever.
Right.
You've got to cover everything, right? And we weren't able to tell, you can tell stories about, of the cuisine of a particular province or village in Italy. And it's understood that this does not represent all Italian food, right? You can talk about, you don't have to, talking about Italy, you don't have to explain the entire context of the whole country.
Right.
in order to say why, Sicilians eat these things, and, folks in Piedmont eat these things, and folks in Rome eat those things, right?
Right.
You can hone in, you can tell your story, right? Or the story of a place or a culture. And that's not something that that a lot of us have had the opportunity to do. I talked to our friend Portia Wilson, and she would tell stories about, if she wants to write about some portion of Black culture and cuisine, first thing is that it would get pushed to February, because that's the only time our stories are able to be told. And then our audience might be unfamiliar with this, so you have, you should spend some more time giving background, and that takes up half of the story, and then you only have the rest of the minimal space to actually go into the topic she was trying to talk about in the first place.
To talk about,
right, and so anyway, that's a bit of a long-winded way of explaining it, but
no, that's fine. That's fine. To your point about audience, just to kind of step away from like the current gatekeepers of a lot of the challenges that are happening within like food media around like African stories and African American stories. Is it, for them, it's easy to fall back on the whole audience scenario, like, oh, the audience won't, or the audience cannot, or the audience, and in some of my most current experiences, I've seen that in action, where they're not really looking at any like data they've collected. They're not really analyzing like what's going on with their audience. So my question is, do you guys think that at this point, like you've been at this a year and you've been engaged with a number of different people, and of course, and like Colleen, with your years at James Beard, do you think that people are underestimating their audience or completely disregarding their audience in an effort to kind of keep the gate closed at this point, or keep it to a trickle? I don't know. I mean, it's almost 400 million people in this country, and I can't imagine that they've got their finger on the pulse for every single person. And based on where like food publications have gone and food television has gone, it feels like they're a bit tone deaf in general about their audience. So like, what's your, what's your, I guess, your hypothesis about why the gatekeepers are so resistant?
I agree with what I'm, you want to go first?
Well, let me just clarify just briefly, is that when I was using the example of writing and media, but when we talk to chefs, it's the same thing. Their investors, their reviewers, their whomever have the same argument. And investors say, oh, well, we need to appeal to a wider audience to get, who are going to come into this restaurant.
Right. Our diners need to,
understand, quote,
exactly,
right?
Exactly.
A reviewer will, not necessarily get what this is, because all of the reviewers are coming from a particular perspective, and thus don't even try to do the research necessary to know where the chef is coming from or why things are the way they are.
Gotcha.
But I'll let Colleen, you go ahead with the answer to the question.
So I, for the most part, I will say, I don't necessarily think that the gatekeeping is intentional by specific motives, but certainly by design. The people who make up the controlling systems of our industry do not look like any of these chefs, do not look like any of these writers, do not look like any of the people that we're dealing with. Black people are very much overrepresented in the lowest rungs of the food industry in all aspects, and very much underrepresented in those kinds of spotlight positions. And it has to do with capital. It has to do with traditional systems of economics here in the United States. It has to do with who can afford to be a writer. And it has a lot to do with, the investors look like the publisher.
Right, right.
And then when the publisher is looking for diversity, he's hiring a woman that looks like him. And so, the food industry is really interesting in that most of the people that like speak on it are women.
That's true. They're
women. It's women. However, until very recently, the ones that were put forth as, the cool kids or the influencers and what have you, don't look like our community. Meanwhile, we've had these women toiling in our community for a really long time, who we all respect, who are iconic, and they're just getting their real shine in the past, couple of years. And part of that is, and I'll be very blunt about this, I think a lot of it has to do with the 2016 election. Everything that has happened since then. It's like people woke up and realized oh, no, we don't all have the same experiences. I would say liberal people have woken up and said, no, we don't have all the same experiences. And they were walking around with this I don't want to say pink cloud or pink hat. And, just thinking everybody is the same and everybody has the same experiences. And it kind of the best way I can put it is kind of forced a spotlight that forced people to have empathy and understanding that not all of us have the same experiences. And yes, Black people do work twice as hard for less. And that we have always been here and have always been talented. So even when we get the first whatever and the first whatever, there's a long line of people who deserved to be that person.
Exactly.
Have their shine. So there's that part, and kind of a rediscovering of America's culinary history. And of course, the desire to be on trend and cool have kind of led to all these people quote unquote rediscovering the contributions of the diaspora, the myriad of contributions to the diaspora. Of course, they're still asking people to tell those stories from the very beginning. And I think where, Black food folks comes in is that these people know that when they come into the room with us, we already know. We know what they're facing, the dismissal, the tokenization, the underestimation, and was that a word? I hope so.
Go with it. It's fine.
Yes. We know. So when they get into a room, when we all get into a room together, first of all, people can let their hair down and their shoulders down, and we don't have to do the double speak and the we don't have to play the game.
Right.
We can be our real authentic selves. And I think when people feel supported, I'll say this, for me personally, when people feel supported and feel like they're part of something greater than themselves, it inspires them. It motivates them. It allows them to keep going, and it allows them the space to be even more creative, because that kind of energy is stolen when you're the only one in certain spaces. It's stolen. It's exhausting.
Absolutely. It is.
It's exhausting. It's frustrating. It's passive aggressive. It really is. And people may not mean to, but that is the culture.
Yeah.
And it steals your joy, and it steals your energy, and it steals your creativity. And I'm hoping that what we do helps people gain some measure back. Because what is, Black people don't get to be autonomous in America.
It's true. It's
true.
true.
We're walking around and it's you're Black people. what do you think about Black people doing this? And it's just like, well, I am like from Grenada, and, David Thomas is from Virginia, and like, Joy Chevalier is from Texas. Like, we all have different Black experiences.
Right.
Right.
And it's like we're human beings, and there is nuance there. Like, you would never, it's amazing to me that people still kind of clump the other together.
Right? It's like people of color. I'm like, what is that?
Okay. What does that mean? What does that even mean? I think it makes things digestible for them. And again, I guess the mystery to me has always been, what is so hard about it that you are pushed to make that choice? Like, why is it so hard to view Black people as people? Where was the, you know what I mean? Like, there's definitely a break in, like, colonization is probably the larger conversation around like dehumanization, but specifically now in 2020, and you see, I mean, there's stories, our stories are literally everywhere, in all levels of media, and it's to this point where you go, okay, so why do you still find it challenging? Or is it that you don't find it challenging, but it's more lucrative, where, revenue is the thing that makes your choices now, and not necessarily, any type of interpersonal issue? Because for me, to clump a group of people together, even a family of people together, like if you walk into a family reunion, everyone's so different. Right. Like, we all might share like a common last name, a common ancestor, but you are not like our family would show up to family reunions, and we were so vastly different than the other families we were around, even though we were related. And so it creates this kind of just flat note about people that makes it very easy to just kind of utilize the talent as you need to, and then leave the story behind. Exactly. And it's been like a conversation I've had in the last few weeks, working in the environment that I have been working in, and realizing how the stories behind a lot of recipes get separated from the culture that they're born in. And it makes it easy to kind of whitewash and disseminate these recipes out to people. And then and again, that disconnection with the audience and the reader and the listener and the diner. Like, I think what I'm seeing now is that there is this huge separation of what people believe these people want and what people actually want. Because if I invite, a group of my friends to my home and serve them a meal that like comes from my culture and what I grew up eating, there's never this challenge to understand the story. Right. They're just kind of like curious and interested, and everything tastes delicious, and nothing's too spicy, and nothing's too strange. And like, for me, I'm wondering at what point when can we take advantage of that disconnect? I think that a lot of the gatekeepers aren't even understanding their own audiences right now, and what they actually want and what they actually can understand. They just grossly underestimate them. And, it shows up in all types of places. Like, the taco truck should only cost me $1 for a taco, and I should only have to pay a couple of bucks for some Chinese food and stuff like that. And then you have the actual diner going to places going, what's the most authentic thing you can give me? How can I eat as close to the original recipe as possible? So I'm like wondering, when did this disconnect happen? Like, why separate? Because it's not helping you gain any revenues. If anything, it's creating this increasing frustration that you don't listen to your audience. You're not hearing us. There's just this kind of, you're in it for the money, which is reflective of the political environment we're in right now, for sure. Like, those who are in leadership, those who are in positions of power aren't listening to those who just don't have any. So that's my curiosity always comes back to that, is where are we underestimating the people who are really consuming all of, what we serve and what we say, outside of the people who are kind of controlling how that information gets to them. Like, as you're over your years in both of your fields, like, in the spaces you've been in, have you noticed that there has been like a change in the attitudes of just the audience itself, of the people who are, of the consumer, of the diner? Have you noticed their attitudes changing, but the gatekeepers are kind of remaining the same?
I think that, go ahead.
No, go ahead, Clay. It's fine.
I mean, I think that's the thing. When you talk about the question of the gatekeepers and why it's this way, I mean, the issue is, the issue is that the food industry is a relatively small community, and there's an echo chamber effect. I mean, this shouldn't surprise anyone when you look at the way that food trends happen. Whether it's Negronis or avocado toast or whatever it is, everyone's talking to the same people. They're all having the same conversations, and so there's this feeling that like everything that is out there is available through my circle of friends, right? Or the community that I know is so cosmopolitan that it already knows all of these things, and so I just need to reach the people who I find in this room, and that room usually, I photograph events, and I cover a lot of food events, and most of the time when I'm there, I can count on one hand, out of a group of 100 or 200 people, the number of Black people there. The people of color there are maybe a dozen, and it's one of those things where that's the image, that's the impression of the food community from most of these people, and so they think that that's all there is. They think that okay, well, this is the representation of what's here, and part of the reason we wanted to get folks together is to show us that no, there's not. It's not just those 5 Black folks, right? There are a lot of us. I mean, whenever we would have these I would have conversations with people. We have a friend, Nicole Taylor, who is the great connector. She's always looking out for everybody, and she does this thing where you're talking to her about the thing you're working on or a challenge you're having, and she will put you in touch with somebody. She's like, oh, you should know this person. You should know that person is doing something similar, or this person's is looking for somebody who's doing what you're doing. And so there was always that sort of need to connect, and the idea of, well, we're going to connect these folks. Why don't we all just put them in a room together? And I'll be honest, I mean, this stuff gets very internalized. I mean, we both know a bunch of people, but when we first started talking about this, I was thinking it would be a group of like 20 to 30 people in the back of a bar somewhere. And it grew and grew because everybody we knew somebody else who knew somebody else, and they all wanted to be on board. So it went from being 20 to 30 people in the back of some bar somewhere to being 100 people plus, at the venue last year, and then again this year when we had another gathering in January. And so the thing that's sort of jarring about it is that you start to internalize this idea that like, oh, well, there aren't a lot of Black folks in this industry, right? And it turns out that there really are. There really are.
Yeah.
There are a ton of us. We are very close to having 10,000 followers on Instagram. We have a mailing list of about 500 active food professionals. We're here, but when we don't see each other, or when we're not seen, it's easier to say that, oh, well, oh yeah, I know one person who does wine, one Black person who does wine, right? But like, no, they're like, I can name half a dozen people off the top of my head.
They're like, we are out here
in
with
Brooklyn,
the guy. Exactly.
Right. And so, that was part of the point of all this, was to change that narrative of there's not very many people for us as much as for anybody else. And once we start putting it out there, once we start putting it on Instagram, you know, we were inspired. The Instagram was inspired a bit by Equity at the Table and their, you know, their format of literally just showing you, yeah, there are people who aren't white dudes who are experts in these fields, right?
Right.
You know, so similarly, we put in, you know, profiles. I mean, they're, you know, not extensive, but we put in these photos of Black folks in food that you should follow, see what they're doing, see what they're about. And so that's the contribution I think we do to the conversation, is by saying, like, no, it's not, you can't say that there aren't any Black folks in food, because here are 100 people that we posted over the last year.
Exactly. There's evidence to the contrary.
Exactly.
You just have to go look. It's literally just scroll over. It's there. You have no excuses. Yeah. Right. Colleen, I wanted to go back to your point about, you had mentioned people who, this idea of not being able to afford to write. And that I think it's a really great point to illuminate about not just being invited into this space, but the cost of being in that space. Like, you know, not very many people are economically in a position to like just freelance for magazines and newspapers, especially, you know, in this particular economy within the systems that we have to live in. What does that look like going forward? Because, you know, up until this point, you know, with most people outside of the Black community, they're just now getting caught up. Like most of them are, you know, they got 150 years of history to catch up on. And we're already like, we've lived it, we've done it. And we, you know, Black people have this wonderful space to live in where we're helping other people catch up with our history and us trying to forge a future simultaneously. And I know, and for me, that is always like doubly exhausting, because like, while I don't mind talking to you about, you know, the food of my ancestors and the people who came before me, because that's important, I'm also trying to move the food forward as well. Like, where do we go from here? How do we create, you know, new food stories? So, you know, for as far as like around those issues of like writing and becoming part of like the group of the storytellers in the world, what does that look like for, you know, for Black folks going forward? Like, how do we just create our own spaces? Do we infiltrate the ones that are there?
I think it's going to be more and more entrepreneurship and independent media, where, you know, the internet and social media are a great thing for Black people, because when, you know, we grew up watching TV, we didn't see a whole bunch of people that look like us, right? So now we can directly reach out to one another because of this wonderful thing we have called the internet. Another aspect of this wonderful thing that we have called the internet is crowdfunding. And what a lot of gatekeepers actually miss in always trying to focus on, you know, this audience or whatever, usually boomers. What a lot of the gatekeepers miss about Black people is that we appreciate so much one another, each other's talents, like seeing each other's faces. We will watch Tyler Perry movies on freaking, you know, Netflix. It's terrible.
Bad wins it all.
No, it won't.
The point is,
sorry. Where I draw the line.
Clay won't. I know that, but I'm saying we will. You know, there's a reason. There's a reason why things that are focused on us do well. First of all, because our images are so controlled by others and have been for so long, we appreciate images where, you know, we're in the forefront or in charge or what have you, like, we're, you know, and Black women are among the most brand loyal people. Let's put it that way. You know, if we know that a Black woman's on a show, we're going to watch it because we're just rooting for her. And if she's the star, we're all going to watch it, you know? So I think what's happening now is that people are recognizing how to harness that power is to just do it ourselves. I think there's going to be more and more of that. I think more and more people realize that the American dream, for lack of a better sentence, is kind of a lie. You work hard for a company, like you'll make a lot of money and be able to have a family and support them. And you just have to let somebody else tell you what to do 40 hours or plus a week of your life. And I think more than anyone, Black people really realize this and recognize this. And we have an entrepreneurial spirit. You know, all across the diaspora, we are known for making something out of nothing. And like, as more and more people have the courage to step out on whatever faith they have, I think a lot of us will be there to support. I can't tell you how people talk to me on the side. I don't know, Clay, I don't know if they're happening to you, telling me like, if you guys like want to start raising money for Black food folks, like just let me know, and I would, like, people will support. And it will also, I think it's a learning process for all of us together. But what's important is that people in this particular space of culinary are very professional in their aspirations, and certainly how they want things to look. Not necessarily how they go about things, but, you know, they're very professional. And if we can kind of like help each other, like guide the process, you know, we don't need the gatekeepers. The gatekeepers will come to us because, like everything else, you know, Black culture is something that people want to have a piece of. You know, and I frankly think maybe we should do more gatekeeping, but that's another story. But, you know, that's something that people come to us for what is like interesting and dynamic and colorful and like we don't have to explain ourselves to people anymore. We can just do our own thing and trust that we can find the support in our own communities.
Absolutely. And to your point about doing our own thing, you know, between the two of you and like the last year and engaging with so many people, what does our own thing look like in your opinion? What is starting to develop and grow and like, you know, separate, you know, outside of, you know, the challenges and the roadblocks, like what do you think the future of Black food is starting to look like? How is it starting to shape up?
That
I'll let Clay start that one.
We are at a point where we are, sorry. I hope, whether it's because of us or just because of this moment, that we're at a point where people are feeling like they can express themselves more, feeling that there's an audience for them, feeling that there are enough examples of people who have been doing things that they want to do, that they can also get into it. They can also try something. They don't have to do the what was historically considered the safe thing. And so going forward, I think that there will be more people telling their story in their own ways, not necessarily trying to fit into the the traditional sort of styles, but figuring out ways to not just be, hey, this is all soul food, but be like, this is my stuff from where, this is what I grew up with, right? This is where my people are from, or even, this isn't even my thing, but this is the thing that I love and I want to invest my time and effort into, right? I feel like the idea should be that we're empowered to tell our stories, but we can also tell other stories. Right. Whatever that is. And if that's Cha McCoy out there,
right.
being an expert in Portuguese wine, or Omar Tate telling, the stories of his ancestry, both from the Philly stoop to, his ancestors down south, those are all, that's them, right? And it can be either, it can be both. I don't know. Does that answer the question? I'm not really sure.
Yeah, and no, it does. It's funny because when we don't get at this point, it's been hard to get space to kind of think about even the future at this point. Like, I don't know how many how many folks working in food and in beverage who are Black are able to even go, okay, can I even tell stories of countries I've been to that I absolutely love without losing something or without people disregarding it because I am Black? And it's well, you should tell your story and that's it. And even in that space, you should tell your story this way. So that, like you said, there hasn't been a lot of opportunity for us to just tell our stories as individuals and put something on the plate that kind of just expresses who we are and where we came from. I mean, I grew up outside of Philadelphia. I'm used to not using Cheese Whiz on my cheesesteaks. And so even that conversation alone can get contentious, but it's just but that's how I grew up. That's where I'm from. Exactly. And, I had one grandmother who, she cooked probably 6 or 7 things really, really well. And because she was so busy all the time, but most of her roots were pretty Southern. And so a lot of that found its way into the food, where my other grandmother, she cooked all the time. And it was never a central part of any particular family gathering. It was kind of that, yeah, she cooked and you could take it or leave it. And she never really kind of celebrated any particular roots coming from any particular place. And so I have both of those narratives that really inform a lot of my food choices at this point. So I guess my question was being in that room with all these Black folks working in food right now, what is the talk of the future? I mean, to have some space where we can talk about molecular gastronomy and who's doing really interesting things with different types of chemicals and different new styles of plating, because I feel it's a conversation that gets to be had by our counterparts. Mm-hmm. People talk to them about the innovations of their food. They talk about what the future of their food looks like. And it's just not a conversation I get to hear very many Black people have a conversation around. Is what's the innovation of our food? And, how are we creating new food ways and new food stories for ourselves, just within our community? So, when I go into a restaurant that's helmed by a Black chef, that's owned by a Black restaurateur, what can I expect? Where is this food? Where are these stories going?
I would
next
say,
5 years?
I would say expect the unexpected. See, what's happening, there's a couple of things happening. People are rediscovering, parts of their heritage. People are rediscovering writers, authors, chefs that came before. And people but so many people have been trained. They did went through the kitchen, the European style, French style brigade, all of that. They've done all those things. And there's been this narrative that that is the innovation. When you have somebody like Johnny Rhodes, who's actually doing things with food, preserving food the way our ancestors did, in ways that were pretty innovative for a time when there was no refrigeration, and they didn't have as much access to as many ingredients as we do now. So there's that, and then you have people who are free to be artists. And I think that's what we're looking for, is a point where you don't know what to expect from a Black chef. You just don't know. I mean, Jason Howard, his food, it looks like paintings. Gregory Bourdet, he cooks the most amazing pan-Asian food, although he's been cooking more and more Haitian food from his heritage. So I think expect the unexpected. Greg Collier, he's I just want to cook food that people like and it tastes good,
Yeah.
And it's good enough for him to be a semifinalist. So I think the thing that I think where we're trying to get to as a community is that we get to be what we want to be. We get to be the artists. We get to be the storytellers. We get to be the nourisher, and nurturer. We get to be all of those things instead of like trying to fit into a box.
No.
Because a lot of,
that's it. That's the point, right? You can do an Asian food and Haitian food. You can do, Southern food and Italian food, right? I mean, no one tells, Danny Meyer to stay in his lane, right? You can do different types of food. You can, you can do it well.
Exactly.
Put in you put in your work, you put in your research, you hone it to the top of your game, and like you can do a lot of different things. And part of the point, just to loop back to what we're doing, part of the point of Black Food Folks is to at least help build infrastructure so that people can see what's possible. They can see the greatness that people are doing right now, as well as see the folks who are, working their way up. I mean, it's about creating that conversation because, it's always great when,
Absolutely.
the Times or Food and Wine or whoever highlights us, but with due respect to those publications, and the work they've done, which I appreciate, all of those amount to trend pieces. We've seen that happen with other cuisines and other cultures. And, because in their infrastructure,
yes, exactly.
the people who are making those decisions aren't us. The aesthetic is just what people are interested in at the moment, and that will move on, right? You're not gonna every issue,
right?
Say, I don't know, you look at like any food magazine, and is there an issue in a year that goes by when there isn't a pasta dish? Right? I mean, there's some pasta dish, summer, winter, whatever, right? Like almost, if not every month, like you're going to get at least half those issues, right? But how many of those issues are going to have something about Nigerian food, right? About Jamaican food, about,
right?
A Gullah food, right? I mean,
right.
It's just one of those things.
Yeah. Right. These cuisines just, it's funny to me because it's indicative of a lot of other things as well, where it's just like, you're still just not part of the general narrative. You still are you're still kind of pushed into the corner as an other.
Right.
And we can pull you out when it's trendy or when people are like curious all of a sudden about something, and to be a part of the fabric of an entire nation, and yet your culture is always kind of sequestered off into the corner until it's lucratively to their advantage to write about you or feature you, has always been just like, it's frustrating and it's exhausting, and you just kind of go, okay, so we're literally everywhere in all parts of your history, and yet we're still talking about as if we're an other,
right? I mean, Yowanda's piece in the New York Times about like, the whole package of Nigerian cuisine, about Nigerian recipes, I should say. That's a start, right? I mean, you start the conversation. I mean, where we are right now is that we're all still telling our personal stories because we don't know all the other ones, right? And the more we share, the more of these articles that happen, the more we collaborate and we meet each other, and we see each other, the more we can connect, you know, the food that we grew up with this other food, with that other food, with the roots of where those things came from. And then we can build, you know, whatever comes next.
Yeah. Oh yeah. And so considering like those stories, especially around like even specifically around like Nigerian food, Nigerian cooking, and then considering the current political climate around, you know, travel bans and things of that nature, for, you know, I find like those, I feel like those stories have even greater significance. Like, okay, so how has, you know, Nigerian culture influenced overall American culture, and then African American culture? Like how where their hands are again in everything, and so like how where's that influence coming from? What influences can we see, and which ones are kind of in the background that we haven't even noticed yet? So it's, you know, I think making sure that our stories are just a part of the overall American story helps strengthen, you know, our history overall. But again, that's a soapbox that would take 3 hours to stand on. So I usually ask two questions at the end of an interview. One is for a young person who is looking at Black food folks and, like, you know, gleaning inspiration from the people featured on the Instagram, and who, you know, want to get themselves kind of integrated or connected. You know, what do you say to like this next generation of young people who are coming up in all aspects and platforms, in spaces of food and beverage?
Don't be afraid to reach out to the people you admire. You know, unlike a lot of other industries, like, people are really accessible in this industry. You know, not most of us don't have assistants or, you know, somebody running interference. So if you DM us or email one of us, like, somebody, a person is on the other end of it. You know, sometimes I have things to say about that level of accessibility, but we are here. People always want to help. And I think, you know, and to speak broadly about Black people, I think I can say this with the utmost confidence, that we are not only a communal people, but also one that's that has a long history of informal mentoring. So, you know, people, I mean, most of us, I think, would be happy to help somebody else out in any way we can. So feel free to reach out to us, to any of the people you see on our feed who are linked. I'm pretty sure that they will respond. Like, I'm really, really sure that they will respond. And if they don't, if you reach out to Clay and myself, we can connect you and we'll help you respond, help you get that response.
Awesome. And Clay, for someone who wants to get into like food photography, food styling, food media, like, or shooting for food media, you know, they've just, you know, they're 10th grade, picked up a camera. They're trying to figure out like how to tell their story and through a camera lens. Like, what's something you could give them that they can start working on right now?
But it's totally true. Is just keep shooting. And not just take a million of the same picture, but, like, you know, keep trying new things. Keep photographing something different, and it helps you both get better at that specific type of thing, but also it makes you understand what you're looking for, what you're trying to do. And that's, I mean, photography is, you know, there's so many different ways to do it. So, you know, you want to find your voice. And I'm still out there, you know, figuring out what my voice is, right? I'm doing it every day. And so the more you do it, the more you find the things that you're interested in, find the ways to do it better. So, I mean, I think that's certainly the first thing. And the second is just, you know, both follow other photographers to see what they're doing and how their work is, but also if you're talking about food, follow the people that you want to work with. The vast majority of the people I follow on Instagram are either photographers or chefs. And those are the communities that I want to both be a part of, but also I want to know what they're working on. I want to see what they're doing. If I'm traveling somewhere, or if I'm if I'm looking to do a certain type of work, or work with a certain, with chefs doing a certain sort of thing, I will definitely go and look for people who are based there or who are doing that work, and I'll see who they follow and who they're connecting with, and I will see what things that they're inspired by, because it gives me a better feeling of that community and of that level of work.
Okay. Awesome. And so for this year, in year 2, what's going on with Black food folks? How can people participate, get involved? Of course, following the Instagram is a big part of that. Is there, you don't have to spill all the tea, but is there anything people should be looking forward to this year that did not happen last year? So, if you guys want to speak on how the organization's growing this year.
So this year, our focus is on professional development, and continuing, of course, the community build. So we just had a panel this week, as a matter of fact, all about pop-ups, where we explored both the chef side as well as the producer side of pop-ups, and certainly the business and wine pairings and things of that nature. So that we had that, and soon we'll be having another meetup and gathering. We'll be doing a couple of previews, and we got something really exciting planned for the website, which we just have a page that's coming soon, so it's in the works. But there's a lot. There's a lot going on.
I know website building is always the one thing people are like, it's coming. I promise it's coming. It's a lot. Yeah. And last question would be, if you had an opportunity to create your ideal dinner, and for me, I'm rarely focused on who's coming. I want to know what's being served. 4 or 5 courses, what needs to be on the menu?
For me, it's got to be some kind of this is going to sound kind of basic, but I really like curry shrimp and curry goat, curry anything, and certainly crab back if I have time to eat that. And some our version of stewed greens is kalaloo. So that has to be there, because that's some of the best kind of cooking that my mom does.
Okay.
Any dessert?
Flourless chocolate cake.
Oh, yeah.
Yes.
Nice. Okay. Now, I did have someone answer specifically how they wanted it served. So they were like, serve it all at one time and not in courses. Are you pro courses, or are you for everything comes out at the table at one shot?
I'm pro courses. Reason is because I eat really fast, and I don't know what that means, but I eat kind of fast. So courses allow me to kind of enjoy the people around me, and have a little conversation and kind of just enjoy the evening as opposed to.
It's always hard for me.
What's next? What's next? So
right.
I think.
All right, Clay.
Yeah, I'm an omnivore, so I like a little of everything. I like to have some representation from all over the world, right? I like courses, and And I think the idea of having just an extensive round the world dinner would be amazing. With French to Korean to, we've been talking about Nigerian food, so now I want some jollof. I eat a lot of really good food in this job, and I have to say that I'm less picky. I want it to be good, and I want it to be surrounded by some great people, and I wanted to at least start with champagne. It does.
You know what? You're the second champagner. It's all good. Someone else said, you know what? There has to be champagne. I'm like, I'm all about that. I want to say I think it was Portia. She was like, yeah. She's like, yeah, we need champagne. She's like, whatever it is, there has to be champagne. So yeah. But yeah. Well, thank you guys so much for taking some time this morning with me. I appreciate it.
You so much.
Where are you based now?
Absolutely. I'm excited to hopefully get to an event this year. Cool. I mean, I'm on the proper coast at this point. So I will pop up. I am currently in Boston on my way to Philly. So yes, I will make sure I get myself to an event this year. So, but I appreciate you guys. I appreciate your work and your voice. And for anyone who is new and has not heard of Black Food Folks, I don't know how, but in case people exist, what's the socials, Instagram, the best way to get connected and follow Twitter, the work?
We are also
at Black Food.
That's our Instagram is our day-to-day. Neither of us spends a lot of time on Facebook, meaning that we don't post very much there, but it is there. And then we have a private mailing list where we send a monthly newsletter. If you are a professional in the food and drink industry, whether that's a writer, a chef, or bartender, or whatever, send us your full name, your email address, and what you do, and we will add you to the list.
All right, perfect. Well, thank you guys again, and I will let you get on with the rest of your day, and we'll connect soon.
Okay, thank you so much.
All right, Tiffany. Absolutely. You guys have a good day. Thank you for listening to this week's interview. We hope you enjoyed it. With the thousands of podcasts out there, we are honored that you've chosen to listen to ours. Be sure to catch up on all of season 1, then come back every week for new episodes. Visit the Afros and Knives website to get connected to our social media, to buy merch, and to become a patron of the show. Afros and Knives is a listener-supported podcast, and funding is provided by our Patreon members. Be sure to download and subscribe to the show, and we'll talk to you next week.